The red live light blinked. Millions of people around the world leaned forward. Inside the glass-walled Geneva studio, cameras rolled silently. The panel was elite, Donald Trump on one end, flanked by American diplomats. On the opposite side sat Ibrahim Traoré, young, calm, and focused, wearing his crisp green uniform. The host introduced the panel. Tonight we discuss Africa's future, Western interests, and world peace. Tension thickened the air. Trump leaned back, arms crossed, smirking. "Let's not pretend Africa matters in the global equation," he said bluntly. "Without us, Africa would be nothing." The studio went quiet. Gasps echoed. The translator hesitated, unsure whether to even relay it. But Traoré didn't flinch. He adjusted his microphone slowly and looked directly at Trump. "I'm here to speak for those without a voice," he said softly. Trump scoffed. "Oh, please, another lecture." The host tried to intervene, but Traoré raised one hand, then lowered it again. Calm, composed. The camera zoomed in on him. He hadn't said the sentence yet, but something in his stillness hinted he was building to it. And whatever it was, it would change everything. "Stay with me. You're not ready for what happens next." Traoré's silence said more than words. The studio lights buzzed above. Across the world, comments poured into live streams. "Did he just say that? Trump's face is turning red. What is Traoré about to say?" Trump leaned forward now, visibly irritated. "You've got something to say, Captain? Spit it out." Traoré didn't blink. Instead, he turned to the host. "Do I have permission to tell the truth, no matter how uncomfortable?" The host nodded nervously. "This is live. Say what you must." Traoré's eyes returned to Trump. "You said without the West, Africa would be nothing." Trump nodded smugly. "Yes, I did." Traoré took a breath. His voice didn't rise, but each word landed like thunder. "Then why do you steal from those you call nothing?" The room froze. Trump's mouth opened slightly. The translator paused, gulped, and repeated the words in English and French. Cameras captured Trump's blinking, his shifting posture, his clenched jaw. And then, he stood. He stood, straightened his tie, and walked out. No one moved. The host stuttered. Phones vibrated with breaking news alerts. The clip was already going viral. But what followed was even more explosive. Traoré didn't move. As Trump stormed out, the doors clattered shut behind him. Still live, the broadcast cut briefly to a wide-angle shot. The host whispered off camera, "Do we cut the feed?" "No," Traoré replied. "Let them see everything." The remaining guests sat awkwardly, but Traoré's presence filled the silence. He looked into the camera. Not at the panel, not at the host, but directly at the millions watching. "My people have died quietly for decades," he said, and no one blinked. Behind the scenes, producers scrambled, but they kept the feed going. Something about the moment felt historic. Traoré continued, his voice lower now. "When a leader says you are nothing, they mean they can take everything from you and silence you." A tear slipped down the cheek of a technician in the control room. Viewers watching from phones, TVs, and projectors around the world. Some cried, others sat motionless. In a small village in Burkina Faso, an elder whispered to her grandson, "He is speaking for all of us." This was no longer just an interview. It was a reckoning. And Traoré was only just beginning. As the cameras rolled again, the studio felt like a battlefield frozen in time. Trump's abrupt exit left a silence heavier than any sound. Viewers worldwide stared at their screens, stunned and confused. Was this real? Social media exploded. Hashtags trended in seconds. Trump walks out. Traoré truth. One sentence, that shook the world. Meanwhile, inside the studio, Ibrahim Traoré sat motionless, his hands folded calmly on the table. His eyes did not wander. They held a quiet fire that spoke of deep pain and immense strength. Suddenly, a young intern behind the scenes wiped tears from her eyes. She wasn't alone. Across continents, from New York to Nairobi, Paris to Ouagadougou, people from every walk of life felt a wave of raw emotion wash over them. This was more than politics. It was a moment that pierced through lies, fears, and silence. Traoré's voice, low but steady, broke the stillness. When power chooses silence over truth, it betrays the very people it claims to protect. The host, recovering from shock, whispered, "Captain, please, tell us what that sentence was." But Traoré only smiled softly. He was preparing to reveal the truth that would shake the world forever. The broadcast resumed, but this time the tension was different. It was heavier, filled with anticipation. Traoré looked straight into the camera, as if speaking to each viewer personally. His voice was gentle yet firm. "The truth I speak is not against any person but against injustice itself." He paused, letting the words sink in. Leaders must serve their people, not their pockets. They must uplift the silent, not silence the loud. For decades, we have been called nothing by those who take everything. Tears began to form in the eyes of some viewers. An old man watching from a tiny village in Burkina Faso whispered, "Finally, someone speaks for us." Meanwhile, Trump was nowhere to be seen on the set. Behind closed doors, aides scrambled to calm him down. But the damage was done. His stormy exit was being replayed on every news channel. Traoré's calm defiance had ignited a spark, one that no storm could extinguish. But the world still demanded the exact words, the one sentence that had caused such upheaval. And Traoré was ready to deliver. The studio fell into an almost sacred quiet. The camera zoomed in on Traoré's face, his eyes steady, his voice unwavering. Then, with the weight of history behind him, he spoke. "You call us nothing, yet you take everything, and expect gratitude." Those words landed like a thunderclap. Trump, still backstage, clenched his fists. The sentence echoed around the world, sparking outrage, reflection, and tears. Millions of people watched in silence, their hearts heavy, their spirits lifted. Traoré's courage became a beacon, a reminder that even the smallest voice can shake the strongest pillars. The live broadcast continued, but the story was no longer about politics. It was about truth, power, and the courage to speak. And as the world held its breath, everyone waited for what would come next. The studio fell silent for a long moment after Traoré's sentence. Trump's sudden exit echoed like a storm's rumble long after the door slammed. Across the globe, people were glued to their screens. But something unexpected was stirring, a wave of empathy and hope. In Burkina Faso, children whispered the words Traoré had spoken. "You call us nothing, yet you take everything, and expect gratitude." For many, it was the first time they'd heard their pain voiced on such a stage. Journalists scrambled to capture reactions. Analysts debated whether Traoré's calm courage would change the world's view of Africa. Social media exploded with hashtags like "Your Respect Traoré" and "Darn Truth on Air." But not everyone was ready. Powerful forces tried to spin the narrative, claiming Traoré was disrespectful or reckless. Still, millions saw through it. Traoré wasn't just a soldier. He was the voice of millions, silenced by history. And somewhere in a quiet office, Traoré received a message. "You've started something that can't be stopped." But the hardest part was yet to come. The days after the broadcast were a whirlwind. Traoré faced not only praise but mounting pressure. Some world leaders avoided his name in conversations. Media outlets dissected every word he'd said. Behind closed doors, diplomats warned him to stay silent, to tone down his words. But Traoré knew the stakes were bigger than politics. This was about his people, their dignity, their future. One evening, sitting alone in his modest office, he read letters from families in villages far from the capital. Many wrote how his sentence had given them strength to endure hardship. A mother described how her son, once hopeless, now dreamed of becoming a leader himself. Traoré's heart swelled, but he also felt the weight of responsibility crushing his chest. He whispered to himself, "If speaking the truth means walking through fire, then so be it." Because true leadership, he believed, was not comfort, it was sacrifice. The world was split. Some praised Traoré as a hero, a voice of truth. Others saw him as a threat to the fragile status quo. In international meetings, his name sparked heated debates. Leaders who once ignored Africa's struggles could no longer look away. Across continents, protests erupted. People carried signs quoting Traoré's sentence, demanding justice and fairness. Yet in the midst of the chaos, Traoré remained grounded. His calm strength was like a lighthouse in a stormy sea. During a rare interview, he said softly, "This moment is not about me. It is about the millions whose voices have been drowned out by power and silence." His words touched hearts far beyond borders. Some viewers wept openly as they heard his message. In this swirling storm of division and hope, one thing became clear. Traoré's one sentence had not only unsettled a former president, it had awakened a global conversation about truth, justice, and the future of leadership. Every morning, Traoré woke to a new wave of messages, some full of hope, others heavy with fear. His phone buzzed nonstop. People from small villages, cities, and distant countries sent stories of pain, resilience, and dreams. Yet, amid this flood of hope, Traoré felt the growing weight of expectations pressing down on his shoulders. He was no longer just a leader, he had become a symbol, a beacon for millions seeking justice. One evening, sitting alone with a worn photograph of his parents, he whispered, "They believed in me. I cannot let their dreams die." But the pressure was more than personal. Powerful interests tried to silence him, spreading rumors and doubt. Still, Traoré refused to bow. Truth is not a weapon. It is a shield for those who suffer. His quiet determination inspired those around him, reminding the world that true leadership means standing firm, even when the path is dark. In Burkina Faso, Traoré's words became a lifeline. Teachers told their students about courage in speaking truth. Farmers felt seen and heard for the first time. Mothers wept quietly, grateful for a leader who spoke for their children's future. One young girl, Aminata, wrote a letter to Traoré saying, "Your words gave me hope. Now I want to become a teacher to help others like me." This simple hope blossomed nationwide. But with hope came fear. Some whispered that change was too dangerous, too sudden. Traoré held town hall meetings, listening to his people's fears and dreams. He promised to carry their voices, no matter the cost. The world watched as a new story of leadership unfolded. One born from humility, truth, and love. Behind the public moments, Traoré's life was marked by quiet sacrifice. Late nights poring over letters from struggling families, lost meals and missed sleep, the loneliness of a man bearing the hopes of millions. He often thought of his childhood friends who never had the chance to dream big. One rainy night, a close friend asked, "Why carry such a heavy burden alone?" Traoré smiled softly, eyes shining with quiet resolve. "Because no one else will." These unseen sacrifices made his courage even more profound. And as his story spread, people everywhere began to understand. Leadership was not about power or fame, but about lifting others, even when it costs everything. News of Traoré's brave sentence traveled faster than wildfire. In cities, towns, and villages, people gathered around radios, phones, and TVs to replay that moment. For many, it was more than words. It was a call to rise. Farmers in dusty fields paused their work, clutching their hats as tears welled in their eyes. Mothers held their children closer, whispering, "He speaks for us." In classrooms, teachers told the story of a leader who dared to speak truth to power, not with anger, but with quiet strength. Traoré's simple but powerful sentence had ignited something impossible to put out: hope. Yet, the higher the tide of hope rose, the stronger the pushback became. Behind closed doors, powerful voices plotted to discredit him, calling him reckless, naive, dangerous. But his people saw something else, a man who stood tall when others bent with fear. And as the world watched, the conversation about leadership and truth took on a new life, shaking old foundations and building something new from the dust. Rumors swirled that Traoré would soon face intense scrutiny, even a political trial designed to silence him. That night, in a small, quiet room, Traoré sat with his closest advisors. The air was thick with tension. "Tomorrow, they will try to break you," one whispered. Traoré looked out the window, seeing stars blinking faintly against the dark sky. He remembered the faces of those who believed in him, children dreaming, mothers hoping, soldiers following. He clenched his fists and said softly, "I am not afraid. If I fall, it will be so others can rise." His calm courage steadied the room. Outside, the world waited, breath held, for the next chapter in a story that had already changed so many lives. The trial began under the intense glare of cameras and global attention. Accusations flew, questions aimed to unsettle. But Traoré answered with honesty, humility, and a steady voice. When asked why he spoke so boldly to a former president, he replied, "Because truth is the only way to heal wounds that have festered for too long." He told stories of his childhood, of hunger, loss, and the strength found in unity. Tears welled in the eyes of many watching live. They saw not a politician, but a human being who carried the weight of a nation's pain and hope. Traoré's words cut through the noise, reaching hearts across borders. And as he spoke, the world felt a quiet shift, a reminder that true leadership is not about power or fear, but about standing for what is right, even when alone. The day of the live broadcast arrived. The studio lights shone bright, cameras rolling, millions watching across continents. Donald Trump sat confident, his smile sharp, prepared to dominate the conversation. Across from him, Captain Ibrahim Traoré sat calm, eyes steady, carrying the hopes of his people like a quiet storm. The tension was electric. Questions flew, sharp, challenging, heavy with history and hurt. Then came the moment everyone waited for. Traoré's voice cut through the noise, calm, unwavering. With one sentence, he exposed a truth so profound it silenced the room, even Trump. In that instant, the former president's smile faltered, his face hardened, chest rising with sudden tension. Without a word, Trump stood and stormed off the set. Shock rippled through the world. The silence spoke louder than any debate. Social media exploded. Millions replayed the broadcast, searching for the words that changed everything. News outlets speculated, commentators debated, governments watched with bated breath. People everywhere felt the shift, as if the world's hidden truths were suddenly revealed in a single breath. Traoré's calm courage had cracked the facade of power. Yet he said nothing more that night, letting his words echo. In villages and cities, people gathered, sharing stories of pain and hope, inspired by a leader who dared to speak plainly. And slowly, a global conversation began, about honesty, courage, and what real leadership means. Traoré became a symbol, not just for his country, but for anyone who dreams of justice and truth. In the days that followed, letters poured in, from children, mothers, elders, and strangers across the world. They told stories of fear, struggle, and new hope sparked by a single sentence. Traoré, once a quiet soldier, had become a voice for millions silenced for too long. He knew the journey was far from over, but his heart was full. In a heartfelt message to the world, he said, "True power is not in storms or silence. It is in the courage to speak truth, even when the world is watching." And as he spoke, tears came to the eyes of many. Tears of pain, yes, but more so of hope. This was a new dawn. If this story moved you, if your heart was heavy, your eyes filled with tears, and your mind stirred by truth, don't just sit in silence. Click like to honor those unheard, subscribe to stand with justice, and drop a comment with just one word: respect, if Ibrahim Traoré earned yours tonight.